live from Shanghai. Just a little bit of intro to Paul before he kicks off. Paul was in my year at Preston, 1991, graduated in 91, and Paul has moved into advertising, didn't you, Paul? You studied graphics but then moved into advertising pretty soon after graduation, really. You can't hear me. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you, Andy, at the moment.
Well, Paul was known as Small Paul, and he's reasonably quite small, because there was a tall Paul as well on the course at the same time, so to differentiate the two, obviously. So, because people, which Paul do you mean? You know, so somebody said, well, it's a small one, so, and the name stuck, didn't it? Yeah, it did. How did that work? You'll have to after the event. Oh, can I see? You're right.
Are you still talking, Andy?
Oh, no. That was just an embarrassing silence. No, yeah. I'm going to hand over to you.
I can't quite hear it.
Right, I'm going to hand over to you. Hand over.
Okay.
You're in control now from Shanghai. Thank you.
Am I?
Big round of applause.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for turning out. It's now, what time is it? It's 7:30 in the evening here, so I'm 8 hours ahead of you. So I've just finished work. So I'll give you a talk a bit. So as Andy said, I live in China. I've been living in Shanghai for 5 years, and working in Saatchi advertising. I'm just going to get my presentation up so you can see. Oh, wrong page. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I live in China, I live in Shanghai. This was taken about 3 days ago, early at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's a really amazing city to live in. It's really interesting. You know, culture is so different to the UK, and we have no COVID at all in Shanghai as of 3 days ago, and most of China. So I've been living here for, let's say, 5 years. And I saw something this morning which is really interesting because it's Valentine's Day. This isn't in the presentation that you've got, Andy, but the traffic lights today were like this in Shanghai, which is quite cool. Which I thought was a really cool little bit of an activation thing they're doing. I don't know if it's sponsored by anybody or anything, but it's quite a cool little thing that they've done in China. So I was working at Saatchi for 9 years, which is probably the only advertising agency your mum has ever heard of. It's certainly the only one my mum has ever heard of. And then I was there for 9 years working on P&G and some other accounts, but I just moved to a new job, and I'm now working at the moving picture company, which is it's like a feature films and commercials production company doing special effects and producing commercials. So I've gone more into production side now, moving away from being an agency, which, funny enough, was when I did my placement, which when I did the degree course in Preston, the course was the 4-year course, and you could do a placement in a company. And funnily enough, the moving picture company was where I did my placement a long time ago. So it feels like I'm back home. So moving on. The theme of this talk was close but no cigar, so this is not a cigar. What I could tell you about is lots of things that never happened, lots of things I've done that didn't happen. Like we had this idea once for a Barclays bank, we were doing a 10% interest rate on savings, and we had this idea of making an £11 note and putting it out in circulation, but the Bank of England wouldn't let us. Or I can tell you about a Fiat idea we did in the mid-90s, which the client didn't buy, and then Mercedes did it, exactly the same idea, 8 years later, which is really frustrating, because it's quite frustrating when you have ideas that you know are good and you can't get them out. So I'm going to give you some advice on what to do with your work by showing you some bits of work. Some of them are quite old, some of them are probably older than you. just so you can see how you kind of push yourself to get better ideas and get beyond the close-up next to actually, winning stuff. I could also tell you about an idea we did for in London. They introduced a congestion charge I think in 1999 or 2000, and we wrote this idea, which was all these cars that was like, we said we'll do cars but like a tank engine, and we'll have like a camper van, we'll have a taxi and a bus and a car, and we had these characters designed, and they looked just like this, and we sent it to Pixar, and we got them to quote on making it, and then the client didn't buy it, and then 5 years later this film came out, which is a little bit frustrating, because I would have loved to have written the script for that. So I lay claim to having an idea for car, or certainly planting the seed in Pixar of this idea. So now I'm going to tell you about give you 10 little points and tell you some stories about them where some of them were close but no cigar, some of them actually did get a cigar. But each one has got a little story behind it. So the first one is a campaign, one of the campaign I did for Tesco's. Again, 20 years ago, Tesco started opening up the really small supermarkets. So they always had these big stores, but the Tesco Express supermarket that you see, that you probably see all around now, was a new thing 20 years ago, and they wanted to launch a campaign for that. So we had this idea of doing taking products that you find in the supermarket that are small and branding them as Tesco. So, for example, a fun-sized Tesco, concentrated Tesco, and micro Tesco for washing powder, and condensed Tesco for soup. So we did this idea, and the way this was produced is we actually worked with another ex-Preston student who was a year above me, did the designs of the packaging, and then we photographed them and got these screen printed by a screen print artist. I was hoping it was Banksy, because I've got a load of these prints in my loft at home, but I don't think it actually was. So we did this, and everybody in the agency, when they saw the work, because they actually had, the backgrounds were actually like day glow colours and everything, and these are 48 sheet posters, so they really stood out everywhere. And everyone in the agency said, oh, you're going to win loads of awards, you're going to win loads of awards for it, you're going to win gold. And when it went into the D, so I'll go back to here. Remember, everybody who judges your work, their opinion is subjective. That's the point I'm trying to make. So it doesn't mean your work's not good if someone doesn't award it. It just means the people in the room on the day, which is normally only about 8 people, happen to not like it or have an argument about it. And what happened with this campaign is it was entered in 2 categories at D&AD. It was entered in illustration and it was entered in art direction. And there were in both of those juries, there was one person who worked at the same agency that I was at, and they're not allowed to vote. But they heard the conversation, and they said to us, what happened in the art direction jury? Everyone went, well, it's really good illustration. It will win for illustration, so we won't give it an award for art direction. We'll let the illustration jury give it an award. And then the illustration jury said, well, that's not illustration, it's a photograph. And so we didn't get an award in either of them. So we ended up getting nominated at D&AD, but not getting an award purely because people couldn't make up their mind whether it was an illustration or not. So remember that don't be disappointed if you don't always win. We won silver awards in campaign press and in campaign posters and Creative Circle. So we got some somewhere else. It was only one jury. So don't be disappointed if someone doesn't like your work. Ask someone else to look at it, because people will always have different opinions. Not everyone's going to like the same stuff. The next story is also to do with winning, and this is about how winning can be whether you actually win. And this isn't about a creative award; it's about something else. But if you not winning can also not be down to the judge. It can be down to other judges. It can be down to something different. And this was a weird brief, because I was working at an agency. This is just before I moved to Singapore, before moving to China, and we were we were asked to work on a party political broadcast for Ken Livingstone, the Labour Party, which is a bit of a weird one. You think, well, what do? You just write a manifesto. You can't really, party political broadcasts are really boring. So what can we do with it? And then we were like, well, let's treat it like, let's try and have an idea for it rather than just writing the script. And so what we did is the idea was that Ken Livingstone represented London, and he was the voice of London. And what we did is I'll show you the film and then I'll tell you what happened afterwards. I think that's the best thing, and then we'll find out if the video works. So this was done, say, 2012, I think it was, and for Ken Livingstone's party political broadcast. Oh, is it going to work?
No sound. No sound.
Is it working?
No sound.
No sound?
No.
Okay, do you want to play from, you might have to play from that in then, from now on.
Yeah. This was all going to be a test.
If there's no sound.
This was a test, wasn't it? It's alright, it's still imagery. Play it.
Okay.
Bear with.
I've got to work it out and see what I'm doing now. You need to get me off the screen now.
Yeah, you're okay. We're going to play it now. We'll play it. We're going to play it.
Okay.
We've all seen party political broadcasts before, but this one's a bit different. This is a party political broadcast on behalf of
ordinary Londoners. London desperately needs a mayor who's in it for London.
Who understands what matters to ordinary people, like cutting fares on public transport.
In the last 4 years, fares on buses, trams,
tubes, trains and even DLR have gone up above inflation every single year.
The price of a single bus fare is now 50% higher than it was 4 years ago. That's just too much. Cutting these inflated fares will save us Londoners on average
£1,000 over 4 years, putting money back in our pockets.
In fact, if I haven't delivered that fare cut by October the 7th this year, I will resign, no question. And that's why
we need a mayor
who doesn't cut police numbers while robbery and knife crime rise.
A mayor who spends more time meeting the police than meeting bankers.
Shouldn't he care more about pensioners being able to pay their heating bills?
The millionaires reducing their tax bills.
How can the mayor justify doubling the number of staff on six-figure salaries
while ordinary Londoners are being squeezed?
London needs action now on high rents and rip-off landlord fees.
on our electricity bills, on the cost of childcare,
On keeping young people in education by reversing the Tory cuts.
on education maintenance allowance.
We need a mayor who'll defend our NHS against Tory attacks.
who will cut fares
and increase the police numbers.
In fact, in tough times like these, we need a mayor with Labour values.
a mayor who will make all Londoners feel like they've got one of their own on their side.
What we need is a mayor for the majority, not just the few.
Come on, Ken, you can do this for London.
Come on, Ken, do this for the Londoners.
Come on, Ken, we know you can do it.
Come on, Ken. Londoners need some help.
Come on, Ken.
London needs you. Come on, Ken, you win this election for us.
Come on, Ken, do it for Londoners.
Free bus passes, I'll never forget that.
Win it for London, Ken.
thanks, London. I couldn't have said it better myself.
So, can it work all right? So that was, what we did is we sort of took an advertising idea and put it on a television broadcast. A very simple execution idea, filmed in a day. We literally went round with a camera and spoke to members of the public, just said, are you a supporter of Ken or not? And if they weren't, didn't talk to them. If they were, we said, do you want to be in the video? What we did is we asked Ken to record his manifesto speech, and then we just re-recorded it with ordinary people. But we didn't tell Ken that was the idea. And what happened on the day of the press conference when it was launched, he burst out crying when he saw the end bit of all the pit Londoners really supporting it. And what happened is there was a massive amount of attention from the media. All the anti-Labour media went crazy, saying, "Oh, Ken's got fake tears, pretending to cry at his own political broadcast," and that they were ringing the agency. And we said, "Well, no, they weren't fake. It's real. He hadn't seen it." And then so the next headline the next day was, "Ken didn't even see his own political broadcast." It's like, well, no, he knew it's his words, it's his script. So he knew what it was about, he just didn't know the idea. And it was like, oh, so that people were actors was the next day's headline. It's like, no, they weren't. They were all members of the public, don't ask anything. And then it was like, they were scripted. It's like, no, they weren't. We asked them to read out a manifesto, and if they didn't agree with it, they didn't have to do it. So what happened is there was massive controversy about it, which made it much more famous, and that actually meant that Ken very, very nearly won the election. He was 10 points behind in the polls before it went out. On the day of the election, it was 50.6% to 49.4% of the people that voted. So he missed it by a tiny part. And the reason he didn't get in was because it was raining on the day. And it's basically a well-known fact that most Labour supporters, a lot more Labour supporters travel on public transport or walk or don't have cars, so they don't turn out so much when there's an election. So if it's raining in an election, it means that the Tories have an advantage, and that's basically that tiny advantage was probably caused by it raining. If it hadn't rained, we might have won. So that's another close to no cigar. But what's important is because we did something different, it really made everyone stand up and take a look. And I think since then, political broadcasts have been taken a bit differently now. They are done more like commercials. They're not just a politician sitting there spouting their manifesto. Do you want to go to the next slide, Andy? Yeah. Not the video yet, but just so the next. There's two videos of the next campaign, and this is really old. This is from the 1990s. I'll show my age. It's like one of the first things I did out of college. But this was made before TikTok, before Douyin, before YouTube, before Instagram. There was no social media, and the only thing there was that there was kind of a lot of these hidden camera TV shows that people were doing. And so we had this idea of doing a hidden camera advert, commercial. But obviously the problem with that is that no one had ever done it before, not properly. People had faked it, but no one had actually done it really before. And the clients were like, well, what's the script? And we're like, well, we don't know, because we don't know what's going to happen. And they said, well, can you write what might happen? We said, we can write what might happen, but we can't promise that is what will happen. So you have to let us go with it. Unfortunately, this client was actually brave enough to say, okay, I'll let you do it. We wrote these, this is what might happen, and they were quite funny, but we didn't know that if that's what we were going to get. And then we went through quite a brutal audition process, because we had to find somebody who would say whatever we told them to say. So we had headsets here connected to the guy, the actor, and we were telling him to do things and say things to people who had no idea that he's an actor. And the thing was, we were trying to figure out how we actually make this thing work, because if you hire someone to be in a commercial, they obviously know that it's commercial. So what we had to do is we rented for the first one, we rented a hot dog stand in a shopping mall, and we got 10 people from a temping agency to come and work on it for 1 hour each apart. So they just went to work thinking they were working on a hot dog stand. They had no idea, absolutely no idea that this was hidden camera. Nobody in this film at all knew there were cameras going, apart from the guy in the Twitter outfit. And we even had an argument on the day with production producers, because they said, oh, I overheard a conversation when someone said, oh, what time are the extras getting here? And I said, did you just say extras? And they went, yeah, so we're not having any extras on this film. I don't want anybody who knows. Nobody who knows what's happened to be in the shot, because they'll spoil it. They'll be looking at the camera, they'll be looking at the camera, they'll know. So we insisted that they were sent home, and we did it for real. We tried to shoot, we had 6 set up, we tried to shoot, and only 3 of them worked. The 4th one would make a 20-minute film, because it was just this guy, he couldn't cut They were 20 seconds each. You couldn't cut 20 seconds out of this guy in the shot because it was just so hilarious. And I wish I still had it. I definitely. He was in this shot for about 20 minutes arguing with the guy, with our actor, who just kept a straight face and kept it going the whole time. So anyway, Andy played there's 2 videos that they're only short, but they're completely hidden camera. There's no actors in it at all, and it's the first time anyone did it.
Do you serve twiglets? Because if you do, I'll have a tune. Is that all right? You're ever so lovely. Come and give me a hug. Come and give me a hug and I'll go away. Go on, give me a hug. And then lick me. Don't just hug me, lick me.
Twiglets? They're not normal. I'll tell you that.
And there's another one. Okay.
Hiya, how you doing? You just help me sit up in the deck chair and then perhaps put some tangy sauce on the back so don't burn. That's it. Oh, madam. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, tangy sauce. Just do the back. That'd be great. Perfect. Oh, it's so comfortable.
Twiglets? They're not normal.
So what I like about that idea is, that the client was brave enough to go with it. We didn't get all the, the nice guys, we didn't get all the scripts we wanted to get, but we got 4 or 3.5. But the client was brave enough to go for it. And the guy in the Twiglets, I don't know if you probably might remember, he at the time he was an unknown comedian. But he became very, very famous just after this guy called Justin Lee Collins. I don't know if you know of it. He's disappeared again now, but he was the guy that was in the suit, and he would do whatever you told him to do. He was kind of absolutely fearless about. In the auditions, we did an audition with hidden cameras, and he was just like out on the street, not even dressed as a twiglet, doing stupid things, whatever we told him to do. And we were like, this guy will do it. We'll use him. So. Anyway, on the back of that film, the guy who did the voiceover at the end, the normal, was another comedian who Andy, you remember Charlie Chuck Andy? I don't know if he's still on circuit or not. He's disappeared, but we got on with we had to do the voiceover recording with this guy Charlie Chuck for the end voiceover, because we wanted a weird voice at the end, which was that not more. And we got on with it, so when we were recording, we said, we want to make an avenue, we want to do something else. So we had this idea for a Cadbury's chocolate bar called Picnic, which is, I think they still sell it, So it's a chocolate bar called Picnic. And we had this idea of having him just being bonkers, and the line was going to be, are you a chocolate bar short of a picnic? And we went to the client and said, we've got this idea, can we make, can we do an ad for, we went to the account and said, we want to make an ad for Picnic. Do you think Cadbury's will go for it? We make it. And they asked them, they didn't tell them the script, didn't tell them because we didn't have a script, we hadn't written it yet. And they came back and said, there's no way to put any money behind an ad for Picnic, but they might do one for Double Decker. And we're like, oh no, but it's got to be Picnic because it's all about, it's a chocolate bar short of a picnic. It's like, what are we going to do? And then I had an idea for a different line, which suddenly we're like, no, that can work, so we can do it. But so we ended up, we rented a bus, so that we ended up doing it for Double Decker, and we rented a bus for a day. But what happened on the day is, because this guy was so scatty and doolally, he couldn't remember his lines. So I wrote them all out on a huge piece of polyboard, like a massive sheet of polyboard. I had them, wrote them out, stood up, holding them up so he could see them. And we started filming. And then halfway through film, we stopped for lunch. And we had lunch, and I had a Double Decker, one of the products, for lunch. I had one for my dessert. And I looked at the packaging, and I realised to my horror, I'd written the wrong. The script is all the ingredients of the product, and I've written it wrong. I've written the wrong ingredients. And I was like, all the blood drained out of my head. I'm like, oh my God, this is a nightmare, because how am I going to tell the producer that it's my fault, I've written it wrong? It's totally, so I called the producer and said, listen, I've got a confession to make, that I've done it wrong, I've written it wrong. And he's like, well, we can't reshoot it, we've run it for half a day. And I said, I know, so I don't want to do it. So just leave it the same. I said, we can't leave it the same because that's not the ingredient of the product. It has to be the ingredient of the product. So we ended up shooting the afternoon with a different script with the right ingredients for the film. And we were like, I don't know how we're going to make this work in an edit. I don't know, because the idea was he gets on the bus, he walks up down the bus, and then he gets in it and drives off. Being mental. And what happened is the editor had a look at it, and he cut it not how he planned to cut it. He cut it like upstairs, downstairs, completely nonsensical. So there's no continuity, no sense of normality, and it made it better because this guy was so nuts. The fact that the story was completely out of sync and didn't make any sense made it better. So actually, that mistake forced us into a position where we made a better film. So if you make a mistake, think about how you can use it and actually use it to advantage. We ended up with a better film, which actually we showed it to the client. They weren't expecting it. They loved it. They put money behind it for 8 weeks, and the sales of Double Deckers went up 600% in 2 weeks. So the whole in 6 weeks. So it was really, really successful. And then Cameras were like, we want those guys to work on our next project. And we said, we'll only work on it if you don't touch the film until we've shot it, which obviously they didn't. So Andy, you won't play the film, this is Double Decker. Again, it's not very good quality, but I think the music, just to say that, the other thing is the music on this. Again, we wanted something ridiculous, and I went to a friend of mine who's a composer, and I said, can you make a music track out of the most stupid sounds you can find? And so, again, we have the music written to be as stupid as possible. So, Andy, play out.
I went into a sweet shop the other day. I said I want some Cadbury chocolate, some crispy cereal, some chewy nougat, up there, and a Persian rug. And he said, you can have some Cadbury chocolate, you can have some crispy cereal, you can have some chewy nougat, up there, but you can't have a Persian rug. I said, I want some Cadbury's chocolate, some crispy cereal, some chewy nougat, up there, with a Persian rug. He said, get out, you, get out of this sweet shop. Don't start showing me up in front of everybody.
So very stupid. Very stupid. I mean, we had a load of out because he was so bonkers. We actually had quite a load of outtakes, which made little 10-second films, which was quite funny. But again, it was on the day. It was a nightmare. It was like, oh my god, I've completely screwed this up. The one thing you can't get wrong in an ad is what the ingredients of the product are. So anyway, that was a near miss, but very successful in the end. My next point is that divided opinion is good. So not like I said about judges at the beginning don't always like the work. This next campaign, generally people loved it or hated it. It was like Marmite. People thought it was brilliant or they thought it was awful. Because it was quite controversial because of the person we used. So we used you probably again all before you were born. Johnny Rotten was lead singer of the Sex Pistols in the 70s, so he was like the original punk rocker and very, very British through and through. Punk was British, and this country like butter wanted to do a campaign about being British, and so we were like, well, we'll get the most British person we can think of, and again, fortunately, Bravish Client, who accepted that Johnny Rotten, who's a bit of a wild card, would be good. And so we got Johnny Rotten to be in our ad, and then the press went nuts because they're like, well, it's a sellout. And Johnny Rotten's quite good. He says, well, punk was a sellout. It was all about making money. It wasn't really about talent. It's all about making money. So again, we did this. Loads of people talked about it. Again, kind of pre-big social media, pre-Instagram, pre-Facebook. So it wasn't viral in the sense that viral is now, but it was massively talked about and became really famous in the press because people were so divided whether they liked it or hated it or whether they thought Johnny Rotten was a sellout or a genius. Andy, do you want to play this next one?
Do I buy Country Life butter because it's British? Do I buy Country Life because I yearn for the British countryside? Or because it's made only from British milk? No, I buy Country Life because I think it tastes the best. It's not about Great Britain, it's about Great Butter.
Yeah, so yeah, it was quite fun working with him. He was a bit of a he was like a 5-year-old child in a 55-year-old man's body at the time, and we made the mistake of taking him to the pub at lunchtime. He got really drunk at lunchtime, and then when he came back, he smeared himself in mud from one of the fields and said, looked to the director and said, "You didn't want me to do that, did you?" And it's like, not really, Johnny, because we didn't have to go and fix your makeup level. But anyway, it was a good laugh. We spent 3 days in hotels and then went to go. He actually used the money from the what he made from it to put on some Sex Pistols gigs, which we obviously went and got backstage passes, which was really cool. So it was, that's Country Life. The next point is, so a lot. What's that?
This is a job. Carry on.
Yes. Well, what I like about this job for me is it's been for the last X amount of years. I'm not going to say exactly. It's been like still being in college. I mean, a lot of the time to get the last couple of years in China was really stressful because the creative work here is not as good as it is in the UK. It's quite difficult to get the work, and also the media platforms are so diverse and so different. Because I don't know if you know that, but TikTok was actually Chinese owned. It's Douyin in China. It's a different product in China, but Douyin bought a thing called Musical.ly and turned it into TikTok, and it went huge. But it's all Chinese owned, so they got all your data if you use TikTok. This next one is so when I was in China, I was working on Pampers diapers, which is a pretty crappy product. No one wants to work on it. And we had another brief, which was the same brief that I'd had for the previous 4 years on the same product, which when babies sleep well, they wake up happy because they've had a good night's sleep. And everything they'd made before I started the job, if I looked at the historical showreel of the work, every film was a sleeping baby, then a demo, and then a happy baby, and then a plat shot. Every single film. And I'm like, I can't do another one of those. I've got to try and do something different. So I had this idea. I think I'll show the film before I talk about it anymore. But I had the idea. When I had the idea, I thought, yeah, that'll work. And then I thought, how are we going to shoot this? It's going to be a nightmare to try and shoot it. But we shot it, and we got it, got it done. But the reason that this isn't the film the client wanted. The client wanted 30 seconds with 3 shots at the beginning, then a product shot, and then a pack shot at the end, which is what they got. But fortunately, at the time I was working on a global account, so we had to shoot African cast, Asian cast, white cast, and Indian cast. So we ended up shooting the same ad 4 times. I said to the director before we went to the shoot, I said, listen, we've got to do the ads for the client, but this is the film I want to make. I want to make this film that you're about to see, so promise me you're going to help me get this. Because I had to beg him and say that you must do this edit for me at the end. You can't be charging money for it, so we've got to get it and show the client and then they'll run it, which is what happened. But it was purely down to taking advantage of the fact we had lots of cast and briefing a director. Don't worry about the main thing. You've got to do it. We know we can do that, but make this film. And this is the film that resulted from that. Andy. So that's about using the situation again, using the situation to an advantage. And we won silver awards for that in spikes in Asia. So the client, when they saw it, they loved it and they ran it. And they never would have bought that as a script, and they never would have paid for it as a script. But because we made it out of the footage we had, they went for it. The next one is another. There's a few baby ones here. The next one is another baby ad, and this is one that. Another boring brief that they'd always done the same thing about when you feed babies good baby milk, their brain develops and they get smarter, and it was kind of the same old brief. And we were like, we've got to do something that's not the same old thing. And so this one was, it was briefed as a 30-second film, but the idea we had, we were like, it only really works if you make it longer. And so we convinced the client to let us make a two-minute film, because we made a test version first. But the really important part of this film is the music. Now, hopefully, most of you will recognise it because it is very famous when you get it. But the problem we had was that after we'd done the test version bit, the people who owned the rights to the original music we wanted to use wouldn't let us use it, and we were like, oh gosh. So what are we going to do? Because that music's perfect. So I don't know how we can find another bit of music that's got as many instruments in. Because the key to this idea was having lots of musical instruments. And most pop music has got two guitars, a guitar and a bass, is maybe a lead guitar and a drummer, and sometimes a keyboard player. So there's very limited instruments within a lot of mainstream music. And we were like, what song can we think of that has a bit more than that? And then we after a lot of thinking, we found another one, which actually turned out better than the one we wanted to use in the first place. So Andy, you can play this one. I think that's all I want to say about this one. But again, this was huge as well over Twitter after it ran. So it's a really fun job, and the editor did an amazing job on that. And but we had one other problem with it, is that when after we did the edit, we showed it to the client. You're kidding, it's the best bit. It's the bit that's the magic moment. And well, no, we need to take it out. So we had to recut it without crying. And when we showed it to the client, they went, "Oh no, you're right," and they put it back. And so that's probably the only film I've ever made where we actually, the first cut we ever cut is the one that went on air, which is brilliant. The director, the editor did do an amazing job on it, but it was really, again, babies aren't actors. It's very difficult to get them to do stuff, and we sort of encouraged them to do things and got them to do the right things to make it work. And we wrote the music first so we could deconstruct it. And yeah, I mean, it's again really successful. We got a couple of awards for that one as well. So again, it's like just stand up for your idea. So if you don't want to, so you know, we were very insistent about this. You've got to do 2 minutes, and you can't take the crying out. And but fortunately, they trusted us to do it. So nearly getting to, I don't know if I'm running out of time, Andy. I'll try and be a bit quicker. This next one is another baby ad, because I ended up doing a lot of baby ads because of that cow and gate one. This one was another not very good brief for diapers. So in China, they give away these preemie diapers. I think there's been a film in the UK for preemie diapers in the UK that was coming. The music on it was Coming Home. You may have seen it. They do the same thing in China. They do these preemie diapers, which are really small diapers for babies that are born like weeks early, and they're tiny. And they wanted to tell people that they do this donation program, and that they give these diapers to these hospitals for free. But we were like, yeah, it's a bit of a boring, you know, we need something a bit more of a hook that's kind of got something real about it. So we're like, we were trying to dig deeper into what we could say and what we could do. So we went and visited one of these hospitals, and it was heartbreaking, because you suddenly realise in China, the difference in China, there's a couple of cultural differences. In China, when a mum has a baby, they go into what's called confinement, which is 30 days where they stay in a room at home on their own with the baby, and to stop the baby catching any germs or illnesses from visitors and things like that. So the mum and baby get bond close together for 30 days after birth. But if your baby's premature, you can't do that, because the baby's in an intensive care unit. And so mum goes into confinement. And what happens is dad goes to the hospital, and all he can do is look at all the babies got numbers on their cribs. And he asked there's someone with a remote control camera that points the camera at the baby in the crib. And then the dad takes a photograph of the TV screen and takes that back to mum to look at so she can see her baby. So they have no contact with their baby at all. And the baby has no contact with mum. And it's not cruel, it's for the health of the baby and because of the culture of confinement. But we were like, wow, that is an amazing insight that isn't anywhere else in the world. So we were like, what can we do? And it was all about, well, the thing that babies need the most, really, is the touch of their mum, the loving touch of their mum and their parents. And obviously mum's desperate to touch their baby. And so we found a real mum who was who had a premature baby, and we made a documentary about her and her feelings about not being able to see the baby, and then we filmed again when they got back together, when they reunited when the baby was healthy enough to come out of hospital. We also had this idea of activation where if you could do something where mums could touch something, or basically touch a picture of a baby on their phone, it would donate a diaper. So the whole campaign became about this long-awaited touch. So this is the kind of case study film for that. It's not a documentary, it's just a case study film for that campaign idea.
It's tough enough when you arrive early. But for Chinese premature babies, it's even tougher. Traditionally, Chinese moms and babies will go into confinement together after birth. But for Chinese preemies, that isn't possible, because they will need to stay in the intensive care unit, and therefore cannot feel the comfort and security of mom's touch, the thing all babies need. Pampers wanted to do something to help, so we created Pampers Touch of Love, allowing all moms to send a touch of love to premature babies with a single touch. Each touch sent a tiny diaper to a preemie in a hospital. A diaper with the gentlest touch on fragile skin, donated for free. To raise awareness, we told the story of a real preemie separated from mom.
我在家坐月子的时候，宝宝在医院，特别心疼他，他那么小就要独自面对这一切。去探视他也是他爸爸去的，摸一下他都不可以的，这一次又一次的摸那张照片。
KOLs shared and encouraged other moms to send a touch of love. We created social posters. And online and offline, moms can buy one pack to donate one diaper with a touch. And because 90% of post-90s Chinese said they would interact with a brand that supports a cause, Pampers saw the biggest equity growth in 6 years, became #1 selling brand at Walmart, and moved to #2 on JD.com. But the most touching of all, over 448,000 preemie diapers were donated to Chinese babies, giving a gentle touch from Pampers until reunited with mom. Pampers, touch of love.
Okay, sorry, I brought the mood down a bit too serious. So the last couple of points, there's some more print work, and then another bit from. Don't give up on a good idea. So this next campaign, we was written in 2012. I don't think it didn't go to the client in 2012. I think in 2013 it went to the client, didn't get bought. In 2014 it went to the client and they bought it, and it won gold at Cannes. I don't need to say any more than that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Andy, do you want to flick through the print for the Times Rich list? So the rich list is basically the richest people in Britain, and they do it they publish it every year, and it's one of those briefs that everyone wants to work on to get the work out. So we just did fat cats. And then two more films for Levi. I'll speak up. So Levi's is one of those brands that everybody used to want to work on. Everyone wanted to do an ad for Levi's. But it started in the late 80s when it became cool, and then they had a legacy of doing really good work through BBH. It's not they don't anymore. It's not with BBH anymore. They finally parted company after about 25 years together as a client. But so this is the thing. It's like they had scripts written. There were loads of scripts written for this brief, which was about Levi. Every pair of Levi's is unique to the person who owns it. So that you kind of it takes from your personality and all your experiences are within your genes. And we were like, I want to work on it. I want to do an idea. So. backhanded, sorry. I'm back. Yeah. I've just got one last thing to show, which was it's actually more a bit of design than advertising, but it was this is the first ad I ever made after I finished college. It was my first placement, 2-week placement at an agency called Leo Burnett, and we got given a brief because they wanted to give us something to do for McDonald's. They already cracked the brief and it was in production. They were going to shoot it and start making it. And we doodled this idea and took it into the grade director, and we weren't sure about it. And he just said, stop the other ad, let's do this one. It went on to win a gold award at Creative Circle. It won the gold for best poster. And we were actually still on placement, sitting at a table with an agency where everybody on the table got an award, but everybody who had a job got a silver, and the placement guys got a gold. So it was kind of the best night we ever had. It was the first ad we ever did. It was all downhill after that. But you'll see the ad. You know what brand it is. But the client even asked to have a logo in the bottom right-hand corner. Can you believe it? But Andy just showed the poster. Very simple. Really simple bit of design, if you've got an idea that only needs one word and a logo, then I think you're doing well. And that's my stuff for now. So there's 10. I think it's a summary of the 10 words I made on the next slide, Andy. So I think it's a build on that. Yeah, every judge's opinion is subjective, so believe in your own work. Winning is not always in your control. Just do the best you can. Take risks. Don't be afraid if something doesn't work, because if you don't take a risk, it won't. You won't find something new. You use mistakes to advantage. So sometimes you think you've gone wrong. It's like think around the problem, and maybe you'll find something even better than the original idea. Dividing opinions good, and especially now, everyone wants something to go viral. Everyone wants something to be social. So the more you can divide people's opinion, the more you'll get talked about. If you do something really vanilla, no one's going to care. No one's going to talk about it. But it's hard to convince clients of that. Make it happen. So if you've got an idea, just try and find a way to make it happen. Because when they see it, they quite often buy. The double-decker film and the baby falling asleep film, both were not released by the client. They were both shown to the clients, finished films, and both of them they spent money on running them afterwards. Stand up for your ideas. So if you really strongly feel your way about something in a film, then or in any bit of work, stand up for it. Don't give in too easily, because fortunately the client saw the right thing with that particular example, but they don't always. And just try and pick the right battles and stand up for your work. And then always think beyond the brief. Always, yes, you might be a brief for a print ad, but is there something better you can do? Next one. And don't give up an idea because you keep it in your bottom drawer, because either another client will buy it, or they might realise later that it's good. and you can always do better. So even if someone's already cracked a brief, try and beat them. I remember, I can't remember who told me it. I think it was a creative director in an agency once said, imagine you're sitting at a table and there's another creative team at the other end of the table. Generally, you know, having been creative director for quite a long time now, I know that most creative teams come in with a lot of similar ideas. You want to be the people that have the idea that the people on the other end of the table haven't had, because that's the idea that stands out. And so, I think there's one more slide maybe, and then my Instagram. Oh yeah, just learn from, don't just learn from success, learn from things that go wrong, because actually you learn more from things that go wrong than things that go right. And that's why in Wired and Kennedy in Portland, they have this massive poster on their wall, which they've had for years, which is fail harder, which is encouraging people just to take risks and do better work by taking risks. And that's it.
Brilliant. Got time for a couple of questions? Quality streets are up for grabs here.
Or I can say my Instagram. Any questions?
Not even with a quality street.
Speechless.
Nobody else wants to know the question.
This from one of the girls that isn't here.
You have to shout. Right.
Oh, I can't hit.
Put it right close. Shout.
I'll repeat. Okay.
Okay.
You've had 20 plus years of experience in the design industry and having creative direction in the multi-discipline teams like advertising, PR, and e-com, whilst having creative management over in offices in Singapore, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. With all this in mind, what made you choose to do stand-up comedy for 2 years, and did it help you in any way as a person/designer?
Why did you do stand-up comedy for 2 years?
I did.
Why did you do stand-up comedy
Yeah.
for 2 years?
Is that the question, really?
I thought by looking at that presentation, it's pretty obvious. Feedback to you. Carry on.
Is that really, was that really the question? I did.
Well, I think so. Considering you worked in all this sort of stuff,
Yeah.
why did you consider doing stand-up?
The reason I did stand up is because you become your own. You are your own creative director. Nobody else tells you. You have to use your own conviction. So when you do stand up, you write your own material. You don't use other people's jokes. You have to write completely your own material, and you have to decide whether you think it's good enough. And then you have to tell people those jokes, and the audience will tell you whether they're good or not. And so it was kind of that. It was a bit of a challenge of, you know, can I really take, because at the time I was working in an agency where I was quite frustrated with the work, and it was a way of getting, okay, I can do this and actually do it quite well. But unfortunately when I moved abroad, I stopped doing it because I couldn't speak the local language, so I couldn't do stand-up in Chinese or Vietnamese at the time.
Good question though.
If that's what the question was.
Yeah, that was the question, wasn't it? Really? It was a good question, and there was some quality street.
Good question, yeah. You know, I always always do things outside your work that challenge you as well. That's the thing.
Kev's got a question.
Anyone have a question?
Yeah, really. So obviously through your work, you work with like kids, comedians, rock stars, politicians. That's a lot of disparate groups. How do you sell in ideas to whether it's collaborators or clients? Obviously, you must have to change how you present that concept in different ways. So I was wondering if you had any insights how it differs between such different people.
Well, I guess a lot of the so I work with a lot like football. I work for Reebok and work with a lot of footballers as well. They're all under contracts, so they have to do it, but they're a pain in the arse because their contracts is to do like 10 days a year, and they come in at like 11 a.m. and then want to have lunch, and then they want to leave at 2 o'clock, and you're like, we haven't finished yet. You've got to do your job. So they're a bit. Sports people are generally the worst. Comedians are, you know, it depends if you've written the script for that particular comedian or not, or whether you're just casting someone. So, like, for example, the Twiglets thing, we were just casting for someone who would do whatever we told them and have no fear at all. And then the voice of that, again, the casting was, we just want someone with a weird voice. We remember this guy who'd been on Reeves and Mortimer, actually, before he was on Big Night Out, and he was nuts. And we were like, oh, he'd be good for the voiceover because he's just got a stupid voice. And he was lovely, but he became a good friend for a few, you know, actually both of them. The guy in the Twiddlet suit actually stayed on my sofa for 3 days after the shoot because we went out on a massive bend of a drinking session. And Charlie Chuck, who's the guy who did the double-decker ad, obviously, because after we had such a laugh with him doing the VO, we ended up working with him again doing that job. And we kept in touch with him quite a long time after that, but obviously eventually paid out. I remember getting spotted, I remember probably 10 years after the Twiglets ad, Justin Lee Collins was really famous in London. And I remember walking down Carnaby Street, and there were people, and he was coming the other way, and there were people looking, and he stopped and went, "Paul, how you doing?" So I got spotted by a celebrity. It was quite funny at the time. And then clients are different. Each client is different. There's one moment in my career, being out in China, where I had a Korean client who was notoriously tough and difficult. And there was one day when, but actually, I ended up with a great relationship with her. She was brilliant. And this was the moment when I realised that, was when there was one day I was presenting some work, actually presenting it remote, like this, because I was in Singapore and she was in Korea or something at the time. And I presented the work to her, and she said, P&G always want options. They don't want one idea. Like some clients will accept it if you just give them one, and I would prefer to give one because you go, well, this is the right idea. Not if I give 2 ideas, then one was not the right idea. And I always played this game with P&G when they say, which one do you recommend? I said, I'm not going to recommend any because I only bring you ideas I believe in. So if I recommend, and then sometimes they try and make me. And this time we presented 3 on this one, and she said, "Go on, which one do you think is best?" And I said, "Gian, you know I don't do that. No, but I just want to know. Just tell me." And I'm like, "Okay, if you really ask me, I'll pick this one." Yeah, I don't remember what it was. And she said, "Why?" And so I went, "Gian, I don't know. It just feels right. I can't tell you why. I can't make up an answer. It just feels right." And she went, "Okay, I trust you." And that was like, wow, okay, I've won her over. So now, you know, she was just playing a game. And so I think the most important thing with clients is to get them on your side, make sure like you are, you know, at the end of the day you're working for them, but be a partner to them and listen to them and make them trust you. And I always just say what I think. That's why she liked me. So I would always just go, I don't like that, I think it's racist, or whatever. And so she knew that I wasn't bullshitting her. And I think that, again, with clients, is just try and build that trust. And then the more they trust you, the more they'll let you just do what you want to do.
Cool, thank you very much. I think on that note, we're running out of time, Paul. Is that all right? So,
sorry, man.
No, you're all right. Spend time, isn't it, for you too?
Yeah, it's 8:30, yeah. Time spent time.
But yeah, no, a big round of applause for Paul. If anybody has got some questions, they can maybe send them to you. You can maybe answer them remotely in the next couple of days. One or two people might have a question or two. Are you up for that?
If anyone wants to just translate from English into Chinese. I think you said if anyone wants to ask me questions, feel free to drop the rest if you can. Yeah.
So yeah, we're back at 1:30 for Parent News Live, and also Mike Rigby at 3. So 2 technical talks this afternoon. And I'll have a chat with you, Paul, before you go. Is that all right? Don't forget